Hello and welcome one and all. In today's installment of Terrible Productions, we head out on a perilous journey through the dark peaks on the hunt of a vampire. Well, my friend Stormin Norman and I set out on a bit of an adventure in search for the resting place of a crashed de Havilland Vampire. There was some planning involved, beautiful views, wind, and wildlife encounters. So, join us for our trip out in the Peak District with a purpose. Alright then, shall I tell you the where and what? Firstly, where. The area we are hiking is known as Stanage Edge, just north of Hathersage and east of Ladybower Reservoir. Also home to Robin Hood's Cave, however in recent times it's been graffitied and tends to be full of litter. From the trips that I've made through there anyhow, so anyone who travels there, please take your litter with you until you find a bin. You have pockets, use them. Also, the area is full of red grouse, skylarks and the occasional deer, though on this particular trip we didn't see any deer. Our jumping off point is Burbage Bridge. There are 2 car parks, but don't worry if they're full. There are a few spots nearby along the road where you can park if needs be. From there we walked across the road onto the trail and the first ascent began. Once we got near to the top, we had a quick brief.
So we're about there. We're going to have to walk up past Robin Hood's Cave, all the way up to about High Neb, roughly around there.
Now, this might be a good time to tell you a little bit about what we are searching for. A crash site of a de Havilland Vampire, an early Cold War era jet fighter which unfortunately crashed during a training flight in 1957. The coordinates and source for our trip is provided by the Dark Peak Aircraft Volume 1 book. I had made note on my map of its grid coordinates, roughly, and that was our target to aim for. I'll give you more information on this particular aircraft later. As mentioned earlier, our route takes us along Stanage Edge, complete with glorious views and plenty of wind. We had a little pit stop for a quick drink and a bite, and also to take in the view. When we carried on, we walked past Robin Hood's Cave and enjoyed the sights of huge boulders. After we passed by Robin Hood's Cave, we took the higher path, which would allow us to continue along the ridge. It was a rather warm day despite the wind, and clear too. The sights were beautiful. As we drew closer to where I had marked on the map, we came across a stone outbuilding off the path. There wasn't much of it, but if you wanted somewhere quiet off the track to sit out the wind and weather, that would be a good spot. A little further on from the stone building along the main path, we reached the target area. We turned right off the main path, and for a little ways we looked around for any debris or signs that might indicate that an aircraft had crashed. Unfortunately, there was nothing but red grouse. We stood on some large rocks to have a bit more of a view, but still nothing. So we made our way back to the main trail and took a break. Whilst on this little break, we did some Googling and discovered a website that other people who had been to the crash site had made a forum and made very clear, alongside our sinking conclusion, that the coordinates in a Dark Peaks Aircraft Volume 1 book was wrong. Fortuitously, these chaps had helpfully provided the correct coordinates, and so we set off to find this site. Also, one of the kind chaps had installed a plaque on the crash site marking exactly where the aircraft had gone in. Now, we have something distinctive to look for. Luckily, the new and correct location was not that far away from where the book's incorrect coordinates had taken us, but it was still a backtrack through where we had been. However, one does not complain when faced with such a lovely landscape. After several minutes of walking back along the path and following a path that leads off the main trail to the foot of the ridge, we went looking for the plaque on the rock face. And then, after walking past a family setting up a picnic, we noticed the plaque. It was smaller than we anticipated, and it was much higher up than we were expecting. We climbed up to get a good look at the text on the plaque that commemorates the pilots who lost their lives that fateful day. It was a surreal experience. Being at that spot, next to a family enjoying their day out, sun shining and surrounded by some of the best natural views in this part of England, at a spot where two men lost their lives, in a brief moment of time of sheer terror and drama. This is why I love history. You visit places of beauty and calm, never to know that something dramatic and beyond your comprehension had happened before you, until you scratch the surface. Speaking of scratching the surface, unlike the famous overexposed B-29 crash site, there was nothing left at this site, other than the plaque that was installed on the rock face. According to the forums, it appears that this site was souvenir hunted for years and not much was left, which is annoying to learn, and to be there and not be anything other than the plaque to look at gave me a sense of forgotten respect. You go to the B-29 crash site and there's a lot there, as it is viewed as a memorial and a lot of respect is shown, but not here it seemed, and thus the only memorial to these chaps is a plaque that someone puts up. I do think that these sites need to be more respected and protected as lasting memorials, just like the B-29 crash site. Lost lives must be remembered and made known in these places. That being said, we did come across this artifact, of which we could not find out what it was. If anyone knows, we will be much obliged. My original thought was that it could be a flare gun that would be fixed to the aircraft. However, I dismissed the idea after looking up photographs of Vampire cockpits. Right, now that we are here, let's go back to August 7th, 1957. A de Havilland Vampire XE866 was undertaking a training flight from RAF Workshop. Piloting the Vampire was Flying Officer P.R. Jones, whom was the flight instructor, and his trainee, Flying Officer D. Brett. They were expected back at base at 0945 hours. However, they were running late and low on fuel. They were instructed onto a heading that would give them a straight flight path over the neighbouring city of Sheffield and on towards RAF Workshop, and was also instructed to descend to 6,000 feet. This instruction was acknowledged, but that acknowledgement was the last communication made by the men in the Vampire. A rescue search was made once it became clear that the aircraft never made it home. The Mountain Rescue Service and local police searched the area until the following evening, when the wreckage of Vampire XE866 was found. According to the Dark Peak aircraft book, the debris was scattered over an area of around 200 yards and straddled the border between Derbyshire and Yorkshire, including the two pilots' remains, of whom I won't go into the grisly details of their states to keep things respectful. Shall we talk about what a Vampire is? We've established that it's an early Cold War jet fighter, and relatively recently Guy Martin on Channel 4 made a programme about the Vampire and flew it through the Swiss Alps in a Top Gun fashion. So if you would like an informative and entertaining video on the de Havilland Vampire, I shall put a link below to that very programme. Another quick note on the Vampire, it was also the first jet-powered aircraft to take off and land on an aircraft carrier. Granted, it was a sea Vampire, but a de Havilland Vampire nonetheless. The aircraft at the time was piloted by Chief Naval Test Pilot Eric Brown, but I shall say no more, as I'd rather make a dedicated video on the Vampire and other de Havilland shenanigans. Alright then, now that we had spent time at the site, taking in the view, remembrance and the whole surreal experience, with a quick drink break, we set off on our way back to the car. After we noticed that we made a wrong turn and yet another backtrack, we took a scenic route back. Instead of taking a trail that would take us back past Robin Hood's Cave, we took a path that took us to the Stanage Pole, which was yet another lovely spot to sit down for a quick water break and to take in the view with the soundtrack of Skylarks and Red Grouse. We then made our way towards the Redvers reservoirs, and once there we followed the path that skirts around the southern part of the Westerly Reservoir and headed up a trail that took us up to the hills. The moors that we walked through were absolutely teeming with red grouse. We got close to a few that were on and just off the trails. They are gorgeous birds to see up close. And after a little waterlogged trek on the final leg of the journey, we made it back to the car. After a hike of 5.5 hours and covering around 16 kilometers or 10 miles, in wonderful weather, beautiful scenery and wildlife. And most importantly, we achieved our objective of reaching the crash site. A day very well spent, memories that will last a lifetime, and certainly an experience that I encourage anyone and everyone to do. A hike with purpose. Especially to any of the many crash sites dotted all around the Peak District, to make a superb adventure out of your day, as well as honouring those who died in them there hills. Until next time, goodbye.
Okay, you ready to have a go? I think so. Okay, you have control.